Hi, I'm Terry Carter, and I'm at the 18th Annual Dutch Hunter Rendezvous.
Thank you, Wayne, for that. That's a great introduction. I ran into Mike McChesney, man, who is one of the premier treasure hunter knowledge guys. And I've been trying to get him to do an interview for me for a lot of years, and he hasn't ever done it. But tonight, for some strange reason, it's a full moon, he's agreed to do an interview for me. And
I'm not drunk.
And he's not drunk. And Mike, I want these guys to know the story about Willie Doffett, aka Lawrence Foreman, who found a treasure in the Caballo Mountains. So with that, take it away and tell me the story.
Alrighty. So in the late 1920s, early 1930s, there was a guy named Willie Doffett, D-A-U-T-H-I-T-T. He lived, I believe, in Rincon, New Mexico. But there's a group of guys that he ran around with, the Palmer brothers, Doc Nosson. They call themselves the Guerrilla Gang. And they were a bunch of ne'er-do-wells that ran around treasure hunting, because that was the hobby of the day for everybody, was hunting Spanish treasure out of the Caballos in the San Andres Mountains. Well, around 1932-ish, a young guy named Jack Reynolds from Tennessee, he had tuberculosis and his family couldn't afford to go to New Mexico. So they pooled their money, gave little Jack the cash that they accrued, and sent him to Hot Springs by himself. So this 12, 14-year-old kid hitchhiked from Tennessee to the I-10 where it crosses New Mexico, and the truck driver, when he got out of the truck, said, "That's the highway you take to go to Hot Springs, but it's going to be rainy and cold tonight. You might want to stay in this adobe over there." So that night the kid stayed in the adobe, and while he was there, he was pulling out all the wood to burn. And when he pulled out the windowsill, there was a pocket behind it. And in that pocket was some paperwork. When he pulled the papers out, one of the pieces was a map. He burned the rest, put the map in his pocket. He got onto Hot Springs and he met a lady named Margaret Anemone Perrone, who ran the health center there in one of the hot springs. And she took him in, and he showed her the map eventually. And since she could read Castilian and speak it, she was trying to interpret the map. And she would send Jack out into the mountains to chase down clues and stuff that she would try to read off of the map. And she bought him a new red jacket. And he was known to run around in the mountains with Willie Doffett. And one day, Jack didn't come home. Never came home again. Nobody's ever seen Jack again. And 2 weeks after he disappeared, his new red jacket showed up on her front doorstep with 2 holes in the front and the inside of the back caked with blood. And she did an interview in 1974, shortly before she died, with a guy named Apache Jim. And in that interview, she says, "I'll go to my grave knowing that Willie Doffett murdered that little boy." For the map. And Willie Doffett had a treasure map. And using that map, him and a guy named Robert Buster Ward, another Bob Ward, go figure, they find one of the caves, because the map showed 7 treasure caves, according to Willie. And they found this cave, and in this cave were, according to Willie, about 2,000 40-pound gold bars. So they took one of the bars, they brought a saw up to the cave, cut the bar in half to see if it was gold all the way through, and it was. So Willie and Buster took that 20-pound lump of gold, they hopped a freight down to Lordsburg or El Paso, and took them a few days to sell it, because you gotta remember, this was Depression-era rural New Mexico, and 20 pounds of gold was a pretty uncommon thing back then. But they sold it, they split the money, they stuffed the cash in their shirts, went on a drinking binge for about a week. And by the time they got tired of drinking, they decided, and they had enough money to buy every car in El Paso at the time, but they're gonna hop a freight back. And Willie said he jumped on a freight, and then Buster went to jump on after him. He says, "I guess Buster was a little drunker than me, because he slipped off and the train took both his legs below the knees." And he says, "I was sitting on the train and looking at Buster laying there going, well, all that gold's mine now. But Buster was my friend and I couldn't leave him there to die." So he jumps off, he tourniquets Buster's legs, drags him to the road. They hitchhike, like one of the only cars driving down the road that year, and get him into El Paso. They take him to the hospital, emergency room, pull open his shirt, money goes flying everywhere.
And when they put him on the table, they started opening the shirt, and here was $100 bills all over the place. And they called the cops, of course.
Never had real work, wound up in San Diego, and he died in 1998. And when he died, his estate was $3.5 million, and that doesn't count the $1.5 million in cash his girlfriend found in the house. And what Willie said was, he waited till the middle of World War II when he figured all the people that he would know would be gone. He grew his hair, grew his face, rented a car, drove to New Mexico. Nobody recognized him. He goes to the cave, gets a bar or two, goes back to California. And he made that annual or semi-annual. He would grow his hair, drive out there, get a bar or two, and go back to California. That's how he amassed all this money without having real jobs. And he died in 1998, and he's buried at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Glendale, California. Willie said that he and Buster could not have possibly emptied that cave out. He said they couldn't have took more than 10–15% of what was in there. So that means there's still between 12 and 1,500 40-pound gold bars in that cave.
So I want to detour you back on a few things.
Sure.
Okay, so one of the first time he got kidnapped is because he was in the bar bragging that he found a gold bar. Tell me that story.
Well, I don't know about the bar. Because he stayed on the Holman Ranch, which that's at the base of Granite Peak, and Granite Peak is where his cave is, somewhere on Granite Peak. Because he said the little shack where he lived, he could look out the window and he had a little can, or a piece of a can, nailed to the outside rafter. And he said he could use that and use it to look out the window and see where his cave is, keep an eye on it. And he said the cowboys at the ranch used to make fun of him all the time because he was a treasure hunter, you know. And one day he came down with one of the bars, threw it on the ground in front of the cowboys and said, "There, you want to make fun of me now?" The first time he got kidnapped, though, I don't know if it was in a bar, because I remember what he said was he had taken 1 or 2 gold bars, he put them in a toolbox in the trunk of his car, and he was on the way out, and he was on the way to go sell them, but then somebody had been watching him, and they blocked the road in front of him and behind him, and they pulled him over. They made him give up the toolbox with the gold bars in it, and I don't remember if that was the time when he got kidnapped the first time, but I know he got pulled over and he got robbed of some gold bars.
Well, and they hooked him up to the spark plugs of the car.
Oh, yeah.
Got tied my fingers to the spark plugs on the car, and then started the engine. Boy, do you think that is a thrill? Wow.
Oh yeah, they tortured that poor. And Willie's a little guy too.
Burned him with cigarettes?
Yeah, Willie was not a big guy.
And then he found that somebody else found his treasure cave and they caught him.
Well, what had happened was Buster Ward told a story when he got into town, and him and I guess it was after supposedly Willie had left to go to California. Buster said he knew where this cave was, and they rented a bunch of trucks, and it was like a convoy. He was going to take them up there, but when they got near Victoria Peak or near some hill, you could see a reflection, and he thought it was a scope. And they sent the cops after him, chased him. Whoever was on it was riding a horse, and they said he was good because he outran the cops and outran everybody who was on horseback. They said, but they didn't think that Willie could ride a horse like that, so they didn't know who it was. It might have just been somebody with, you know, a telescope or binoculars watching him, but he thought it was Willie going to shoot him. But they had stories that they wouldn't tell you the whole truth. Like they caught this one skinny kid, because there's the cave on the mountain where the gold is stored. Then there's a place in Hackberry Wash down at the bottom. They call it the smoke hole, because it's a little ground level cave that you can drive right up to it. And what it was, all the locals thought it was some entrance to a treasure cave. So what they did is they'd stick tires in there and light them on fire and see where the smoke had come out, and see if there were any secret entrances, which is why they call it the smoke hole. And they would take some bars out of the cave and bring them down and stash them in the smoke hole, and bring a car up and load them up and take off. Well, one time they came up, I forget what this kid's name was, but you know who I'm talking about, right? Yep. It was this little skinny guy. He said they caught him coming out of the smoke hole, and And Buster told him to take off running. And he shot and it zipped right past his head and he fainted. And we just left. No, they shot that guy in the head. They killed him because they had to keep their cave a secret. Yep. And the big thing was he swore he would never tell anybody exactly where that cave was. But there's clues. It says, because he described the cave. He said the cave was about 2.5, 3 foot in diameter. It's a hole in the ground. You drop about 6 feet straight down, and then when you get to the bottom, the cave is about 1.5 feet tall. You got to crawl on your belly for about 15 or 20 feet, and then it opens up to where you can stand up. And he said when you get to that point, you can just see the walls of the cave are lined with bars of gold.
So you got to meet him in person. I never did. I just seen his video interviews, and you talked with him for quite a while. Or
oh, a bunch of times. I've visited his grave a couple times too after he died. Because the funny thing is, he was buried like 3 blocks from where I worked in Glendale. Yeah. But yeah, he lived on.
He had a lot of property, and you was checking his property. Did you ever? Man, I'm going to pin you down. Did you ever find any of his gold buried on his property?
No, the only property I knew about that he had a place out in the mountains we found. And we didn't live, but it was in the California mountains. It's weird. It's a place he had, but the house he had in San Diego, nice house. It was on, was it San, shit, I don't remember the address. It's been a long time. But yeah, super nice guy, super funny, but the reason he would never tell anybody where it was is because there's probably 6 bodies in that cave. Because there's the skinny kid that I don't remember his name that they murdered.
Yeah. And then the guys that kidnapped.
Well, there's the 2 couples that came down from St. Louis to buy gold that ran into the Palmer brothers. And these guys, the Palmer brothers, were the local real badasses. And if you read the books, the Gold House trilogy, that's where they talk about the Palmer brothers a lot. The state police knew them. Everybody thought, yeah, they probably did it. Turns out that both husbands and one of the wives went into, and I don't know if it was the cave or the smoke hole, and they were supposed to look at this gold and buy a bunch of it. And they murdered the 2 men and 1 woman inside. The other woman was staying outside with the car. They came out, killed her, and then burned all their stuff right there and supposedly stashed their bodies in the cave. So there's 5, and then who else? Shit, those 5, and there were 2 more that we figured that were probably in that cave somewhere. And you know, while there's no statute of limitations on murder, so you figure an 80-year-old man, if he tells a secret to where the cave is and somebody comes out with a bunch of bodies, he gets the blame. He goes to jail for the rest of his, whatever's left of his life. So keep it a secret. He had the money. He didn't need anything else.
Well, that said, Mike, man, that's a wrap, and thank you.
No worries.